I woke up in the body of a romance novel protagonist, and before I could even finish downloading the guy's memories, a ridiculously beautiful woman was clinging to me, trying to devour my face. Just as my brain was rebooting, a few lines of text floated in my vision, like a glitched heads-up display. Subjects drugged. Female lead initiates one-night stand, then leaves and secretly gives birth. Male lead is traumatized, beginning the angsty reunion plotline. My favorite part is the groveling. Let the angst begin. Reading the captions, I just had to laugh. Years of angsty pining, a secret baby plot. Not on my watch. All I had to do was make sure this one-night stand never happened. Megan, I said in my phone, go downstairs to that boutique shop. Buy a Seraphim, the electric one, and give me another room. On the other end of the line, my famously efficient and unflappable executive assistant, Megan Shaw, was silent for a full 3 seconds. I could practically see her professional mask cracking, her mind frantically trying to process whether her boss had finally lost his mind. Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice perfectly level, betraying nothing. One room, and are you certain about the Seraphim, sir? Yes, the most powerful one they have, I said curtly, simultaneously shoving away the woman in my arms as she lunged for me again. Her skin was fever hot, her breath a cloying, sweet scent like overripe peaches, eroding my self-control. The heat coiling in my gut was getting worse, a predatory fire I'd never felt before. Damn, this drug was stronger than I thought. What are you doing, host? What are you planning to do to the female lead? Why buy a toy? You're right here. Get to it. I got my popcorn ready and you pull this refund. The text floating in front of me exploded in a flurry of question marks and angry emojis. I ignored it, adding one last instruction into the phone. I need it in 10 minutes. Is that a problem? No problem at all, Mr. Thorne. Megan's professionalism was, as always, second to none. After hanging up, I scooped up the woman, Olivia Hayes, who was now fumbling with the collar of her dress, and unceremoniously dumped her onto the king-sized bed. She let out a soft whimper, her eyes glassy with desire as she looked at me. Her legs tangled and untangled themselves, her body arching in a blatant invitation. So hot. I need. My throat was dry. I had to admit, the scene would be lethal to any straight man. The body I was in was certainly having the most honest and inconvenient of reactions. But I wasn't going to play along. Years of groveling, a secret love child, 1,000 chapters of manufactured misunderstandings. Sorry, but my life story doesn't include cheap, overwrought drama. I strode into the bathroom, twisted the cold tap on full blast, and splashed water on my face again and again, trying to douse the fire. The man in the mirror had a flushed face, but his eyes were alarmingly clear. Host, get a grip. That's the female lead. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm starting to question everything. What's wrong with this protagonist? Is he broken? The doorbell rang, right on cue. I smoothed out my wrinkled dress shirt and went to open it. Megan Shaw stood there, still in her sharp business suit. In one hand, she held an unmarked black paper bag. In the other, 2 key cards. Her composure was flawless. You'd think she'd just run down to CVS for a bottle of water, not completed a bizarrely explicit errand at an adult novelty shop. Mr. Thorne, what you asked for? The room next door is also ready. She handed me the bag and one of the key cards, her gaze fixed straight ahead, deliberately avoiding looking past me into the room. Thank you, Megan. I took the items and stepped aside. Take Ms. Hayes from the bed along with the Seraphim and escort them to the adjacent room. Make sure she's secure and undisturbed. For a split second, Megan's professional mask fractured, but it was so fast I might have imagined it. She simply gave a slight nod. Of course, Mr. Thorne. With that, she clicked across the floor in her heels, walked straight to the bed, expertly wrapped the writhing Olivia Hayes in a duvet like a human burrito, and then effortlessly hoisted her over her shoulder. Yes, hoisted. My eye twitched. Is this secretary a weightlifter? The tone just shifted. I'm getting whiplash. Am I the only one who thinks the secretary is way more badass than the protagonist? Carrying Olivia, Megan paused at the door, gave me a brief, respectful nod, and then disappeared into the room next door. The click of the closing door was crisp and final. The world was finally quiet. I bolted the door. The heat in my body hadn't fully subsided. I headed back to the bathroom, planning to take matters into my own hands. I opened the black paper bag to see what my powerful new acquisition looked like. Inside, beside the tastefully packaged box, were a few cooling gel patches, a bottle of chilled mineral water, and a box of extra-strength hangover pills. I blinked, then let out a short, surprised laugh. Megan Shaw. Interesting. I ripped open a cooling patch and slapped it onto my forehead. The icy sensation instantly cleared some of the heat. The text floating in my vision had gone completely haywire. I take it back. This protagonist isn't broken. He's just an absolute monster, making his secretary buy a toy for the female lead. What kind of twisted logic is that? She's going to murder him when she finds out. Wait, isn't anyone else impressed by the secretary? That was a power move. The plot has officially gone off the rails. I'm buckled in for this ride. I saw the comment about Megan's power move, and a slight smile touched my lips. That's right. It was time for this story to get a rewrite. 02, the bathroom, filled with steam. With the cooling patch on my forehead and a bottle of ice-cold water in my hand, the fire in my veins was finally banked, though it still prowled restlessly, looking for an escape. Host, stay strong. Don't do it yourself. Have some dignity. Honestly, that secretary who just fireman carried the female lead out of the room. I'm into it. Seconded. Brooding young CEO and his ice queen assistant. I ship it. I glanced at my reflection, at the desires still clouding my eyes, and smirked. A bunch of wires. Knock, knock, knock. The rapping was soft, measured. At this hour, it could only be her. I grabbed a towel, wiped my face, and pulled the door open. Megan stood there, having swapped her restrictive suit for a white hotel bathrobe. Her long hair was damp, falling over her shoulders. Without makeup, the intimidating edge she projected at the office was gone, replaced by a softer, more approachable aura. She held a mug of warm honey water. Seeing me, she tried to maintain her composure, but her eyes gave her away. Mr. Thorne, you didn't look well. I thought this might help. I've already settled Miss. Hayes next door. I confirmed she's safe. Her voice was a clear, calming presence in the quiet hallway, washing over the chaos in my head. I didn't take the mug. My eyes were fixed on her clean, scrubbed face. Her usually steady gaze was now glistening from the steam, making her look exceptionally vulnerable. The last dregs of heat in my throat, upon seeing her, seemed to find a new target and burst forth with renewed intensity. Warning, warning, hostile intent detected. Oh no, it's happening. He's going to make a move on the secretary. PULL her in. I've been waiting for this. Amidst a flurry of shocked text, I grabbed her wrist and pulled her into the room, slamming the door shut behind us with a resonant thud. Megan, clearly not expecting it, stumbled. The mug of honey water nearly slipped from her grasp. She steadied herself, her brow furrowing. Mr. Thorne. I pinned her against the door, my hot breath ghosting over her ear. She flinched, and a blush crept up from her neck. Megan, I said, my voice raspy and unfamiliar. The drug, ignited by her proximity, roared back to life. What do you think of me? She was silent for a moment. The collar of her robe had fallen slightly open, revealing the delicate line of her collarbone. She seemed to be genuinely considering my question, rather than her current predicament. You're a good man, she whispered, her gaze averted. You're right. I chuckled, my warm hand cupping her cool cheek. So, Megan Shaw. I enunciated her name, savoring each syllable. Will you marry me? The air froze. Megan's head snapped up. In her eyes, which were usually a sea of calm professionalism, I saw pure, unadulterated shock and a flicker of a panic I couldn't quite decipher. HYSD? Did I hear that right? Marriage? Skipping right to the final boss. This man understands efficiency. Secretary. I just came to deliver some honey water, and now I'm getting promoted to First Lady? Yes. Say, yes. Time seemed to stretch. I could hear my own heart hammering against my ribs and the sound of her breathing growing ragged. Just when I expected her to deflect with a Mr. Thorne, you've had too much to drink, she bit her lower lip, the blush on her ears spreading across her entire face. She looked at me, a storm of emotions I'd never seen before swirling in her eyes. Finally, it all settled, coalescing into a look of gentle, resigned surrender. I will. The two words were barely a whisper, but they hit my brain like a thunderclap. The last thread of my rationality snapped. I lowered my head and crashed my lips onto hers, the ones I had secretly wanted for longer than I cared to admit. The mug of honey water fell from her hand, landing with a soft thud on the plush carpet, its warm contents seeping into the fibers. Her hands, however, found their purchase gripping the front of my shirt. It was a night of tangled limbs and feverish whispers. Only when the first hint of dawn broke through the window did the madness, catalyzed by a drug but sealed by fate, finally subside. I held the sleeping woman in my arms, my body sated and my mind shockingly clear. DNG, plot deviation has reached 90%. Congratulations, host, on successfully avoiding the secret baby plotline. New hidden route unlocked. Marrying the boss. The secretary's gambit. Wait, what's that noise from next door? Holy, switching to security cam feed. The original female lead, Olivia Hayes, is awake. She sees the thing on the bed. The look on her face. Ah ha ha ha, she's running. She's running for her life. I read the last line of text and smiled silently. Run, Olivia. Run as far as you can. Someone else can have that angsty, melodramatic reunion. I leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to Megan's forehead. My female lead was here now. 03. Olivia Hayes' perspective. My head was splitting open, a vicious cocktail of a hangover and the aftereffects of whatever drug I'd been given. My temples throbbed in a painful rhythm. I opened my eyes to an unfamiliar white ceiling and a crystal chandelier that was ornate but cold. This wasn't my room. My memory was a smeared mess, leaving only blurry, mortifying fragments. Heat, desperation, and the hazy outline of a man. Caleb Thorne. The name sliced through the fog in my brain, his handsome, sharp-featured face snapping into focus. I remember being drugged, throwing myself at him like some shameless lunatic. And then what? I shot upright, my heart pounding. A terrifying thought sent a chill down my spine. I looked down at myself. I was still in last night's dress. It was wrinkled, but it was intact. I breathed a sigh of relief, but then a sticky, damp feeling beneath me sent my heart rocketing back into my throat. Stiffly, I lifted the duvet inch by agonizing inch. The sheets were a mess. And in the middle of it all, lying innocently, was a thing I had only ever seen on certain corners of the internet. It was purple, oddly shaped, and a small blue indicator light was blinking at its tip. My mind went completely, utterly blank. What happened? I scrambled through my memories, broken images crashing through my head. I remember Caleb throwing me on the bed. He'd stood over me, his eyes holding no lust, only a cruelly detached clarity and a flicker of mockery I couldn't understand. Then, I think a woman in a business suit came in. Who was she? What did she do? So, it wasn't Caleb. He would rather use that to solve my problem and lay a finger on me. Wait, I remember Caleb seemed drugged last night, too. He must be impotent. All that handsome packaging, and for what? He couldn't perform. I scanned the room. My purse was placed neatly on a nightstand, next to an unopened bottle of water. My clothes had even been picked up off the floor and folded on the sofa. I couldn't stay here, not for another second. Like a cornered animal, I scrambled off the bed, shoved my feet into my heels, grabbed my purse, and stumbled toward the door. I couldn't look at the bed, and I definitely couldn't look at that thing on it. To look again would be to brand the shame onto my very soul. I yanked open the door. The hallway was empty, eerily silent. I fled toward the elevators, frantically mashing the down button. When the doors opened, the mirrored walls reflected my pathetic state. Hair mess, face pale, eyes red and swollen. I huddled in the corner until the elevator reached the lobby. Then, like a prisoner finding an escape route, I burst out of the hotel and into the cold morning air without a backward glance. Run, just run. Olivia, forget all of this. It was just a nightmare. From now on, the name Caleb Thorne is forbidden territory. My first time was with that thing. Wait, I don't think I saw any blood. I should go to a clinic and get checked out. Ms. Hayes, your hymen is still intact. Hearing the doctor's words, Olivia finally let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. So, that didn't count as losing her virginity, right? Right. It didn't count. She was still a virgin. Oh God. Caleb Thorne, you are so not a man. Caleb, did someone just insult me? 04. Morning sunlight streamed through a gap in the blackout curtains, casting a sharp sliver of light across the dark carpet. I opened my eyes. The headache from the drug and whatever they put in my drink lingered, but the desperate, hollow ache in my body had been replaced by a deep, satisfied lethargy. The space beside me was empty, but her scent, a light, clean shampoo, and her warmth still clung to the sheets. I sat up. On the nightstand, my phone and watch were arranged neatly next to a glass of water that was still perfectly lukewarm. From the living room, I could hear the low murmur of a woman's voice. It was Megan on a call. Yes, Mr. Wallace, Mr. Thorne's schedule is packed, but I'll do my best to fit you in for next Wednesday afternoon. Of course. I'll have the preliminary report in your inbox before 10 a.m. Her voice was calm, professional, and completely devoid of emotion. Last night might as well have been a fever dream. I walked out barefoot. She stood with her back to me, facing the floor-to-ceiling window. She was already dressed in one of her immaculate business suits, her long hair twisted into a severe bun. Only a few stray wisps escaped to frame the elegant curve of her neck. A textbook professional, sleeps with the boss, and the next day is back to being an emotionless work machine. She probably thinks he was just messing around. She must think that whole marriage thing was just the drugs talking. Do something, host. Prove you're not that kind of guy. Megan ended her call and turned. Her body went rigid for a split second when she saw me, but she recovered instantly. She gave me a slight nod, her gaze fixed somewhere around my chin, refusing to meet my eyes. Good morning, Mr. Thorne. You're awake. I've ordered room service for breakfast. It will arrive in 15 minutes. You have a video conference at 9:30, a meeting with Mr. Chun from Omnitech at 11, and this afternoon. Megan, I cut her off. She paused, lifting her lashes. Her eyes, usually as placid as a still lake, now rippled as if a stone had been tossed into them. Well, I said last night, I stated, looking directly into her eyes, my voice clear and deliberate. I meant it. Her knuckles, where she gripped her phone, turned white. Her lips parted as if to speak, but all that came out were two choked words. That's insane. Insane. I laughed and closed the distance between us, backing her up against the window until she was trapped. I could smell the shampoo in her hair, the same scent as last night. Getting a marriage license, making it official. How is that insane? I reached out, my fingertips brushing against her reddening earlobe. She flinched like a startled rabbit. The professional mask finally cracked, a blush creeping across her cheeks. Mr. Thorne, we're not compatible. This is too fast. It's not rational. Then tell me what's rational, I countered, ending up like Olivia Hayes. Drugged and delivered to my bed. What if she'd gotten pregnant? Then what? She disappears for a few years, comes back with my mini-me, and we play out some tragic opera of her running and me chasing. It's my life. I write the script. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. I want you, Megan. And right now, I need you to use your professional skills to handle a top priority personal matter for me. Her breathing hitched. What is it? Start planning our wedding. I want it done as soon as possible. HLYSD. Reverse psychology. He's using corporate jargon to pressure her into marrying him. Megan, I'm just an employee, and now I have to be the boss's wife and the wedding planner? Does this job come with a raise? Heck yeah, it does. He should just hand over his credit cards. Megan stared at me, the shock, panic, and hesitation warring in her eyes. Finally, she took a deep breath, as if making a monumental decision. Fine. She pulled a small notebook and pen from her pocket, actually shifting into work mode. Mr. Thorne, regarding the wedding date, considering your international travel schedule for the second half of the year, the earliest window is next week. We'll need both of our birth certificates for the license. Yours is at your family's estate. Shall I send a courier? Also, regarding the prenuptial agreement. I watched, amused, as she began methodically listing the to-do items for our marriage. The panic hadn't fully left her eyes, yet she was forcing herself into the role of project manager. I couldn't help but laugh. I took the notebook from her hand and snapped it shut. None of that matters right now. I leaned in, my voice a low whisper meant only for her. Tonight, I'm coming to your place. She froze completely. My apartment is really small, she stammered, her eyes darting around the room. Perfect. I want to see where my leading lady lives. At the office, everything was normal, yet everything was different. When Megan brought me my coffee, her fingers brushed against my hand. She pulled back as if electrocuted, spilling a few drops. During a board meeting, I was tapping my fingers on the table out of habit. I glanced up and caught her staring at my hand with a dazed expression. The moment our eyes met, she snapped her head down, pretending to be engrossed in her notes, but the tips of her ears were bright red. Ha ha! The thrill of a secret office romance. The way Mr. Thorne is looking at her. He's practically undressing her with his eyes. And she has to pretend to be all business. This isn't work. This is foreplay. The day finally crawled to an end. I intercepted Megan in the underground garage as she was trying to make a quiet escape. Get in, I said. She reluctantly slid into the passenger seat and spent the entire drive staring out the window, so tense she forgot to buckle her seatbelt. I leaned over, the space between us shrinking, and clicked the belt into place for her. I could smell her perfume and see her lashes trembling. Mr. Thorne. It's Mr. Thorne at the office. After hours, you can use my name. Her face instantly flushed crimson. Her apartment was in a quiet, older building in Brooklyn, a world away from the minimalist, sterile condo I might have imagined for her. The moment she opened the door, I was hit with a wave of unabashed girlishness. The doormat was shaped like a cat's paw. The shoe rack was lined with intricate Lego botanicals. The living room, though small, was incredibly cozy. Under the warm yellow light, the cream-colored sofa was piled with pastel-colored pillows. The most prominent feature was a 5-foot-tall pink bunny plushie with long, floppy ears. The walls weren't adorned with tasteful art, but with a full-blown collage of anime posters and a glass display cabinet filled with figurines. I looked from the pink bunny, sitting primly on the sofa, to Megan, who was standing beside me looking like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. I had to physically restrain myself from laughing. Contrast. This is the legendary Gap Mo. I'm dead. Who knew the ruthless, Ice Queen secretary who commands boardrooms for a living went home to a place like this? This is too cute. Kayla, my man, you hit the jackpot. Megan's face was so red, it was practically glowing. She stood awkwardly, not knowing what to do with her hands. I just like this stuff. I took off my suit jacket, tossed it on the sofa, and walked straight to the figurine cabinet. This one, I said, picking up a beautifully crafted figure. Isn't this the limited edition Alicia from Honkai Impact 3rd? Megan's head shot up, her eyes shining with a sudden, brilliant light. You know it. Yeah, I nodded. I was an angel investor in that gaming company back in college. The way she looked at me changed completely, from a boss who had stumbled into her secret sanctum to a kindred spirit. It was like a switch had been flipped. She rushed over, pointing at the figures in the cabinet and launching into an excited, nonstop monologue. In that case, can you give me a beta testing key for Honkai, Star Rail? It doesn't go into closed beta for another 6 months. Don't worry, I'll get you a key when it does. Her face was animated, her eyes sparkling. She was a completely different person from the composed secretary I saw every day. I didn't say anything, just watched her, a genuine smile spreading across my face. This, without the armor of her business suit, was the real her, and she was utterly adorable. After that night at Megan's secret geek paradise, the atmosphere between us shifted. At the office during the day, she was still the omnipotent, unflappable Megan Shaw, scheduling my life and managing my empire without missing a beat. But now, there were subtle changes. When we'd cross paths in the break room, she'd blush and press a homemade, sickeningly sweet cookie into my hand. Or the documents she'd hand me in a meeting would have a tiny sticky note hidden underneath, with a cute, hand-drawn doodle cheering me on. So this is married life? The air itself tastes like sugar. I'm so jealous. I want cookies from Secretary Shaw. You better appreciate her, Caleb, or we're forming a team to steal your wife. I read the floating text, pinched the bridge of my nose, and popped the cookie, shaped like a tiny cat paw, into my mouth. They were right. It was very sweet. Today was a big day, a major partnership negotiation with the Hayes Corporation. To be honest, I was surprised. After that night, I figure Olivia Hayes would have blocked my number and sworn a blood oath to never see me again. I certainly didn't expect a formal proposal for a joint venture to land on my desk so quickly. In the conference room, I sat at the head of the table. Megan was beside me, quietly running through the final contract details. The familiar, clean scent of her shampoo was a pleasant distraction. The door opened and the Hayes delegation walked in, led by Olivia's father, a shrewd-looking man in his late 50s. Trailing behind him was Olivia herself. She was dressed in an elegant, champagne-colored suit, her makeup flawless. She looked every bit the proud, composed heiress, as if the incident at the hotel had never happened. Except, from the moment she sat down, her stare was making my skin crawl. It was an incredibly complex look, a mixture of pity, sympathy, compassion, and encouragement. She would glance at my face, then her eyes would slowly drift downward, lingering for 2 seconds on the region below my belt, before she'd let out a barely audible, almost pitying sigh. Once, twice, a third time, my knuckles whiten around my coffee mug. LMAO, I'm dying. Is she looking at him like he's some kind of tragically disabled, but still successful CEO? Olivia's internal monologue. Sigh. So handsome. What a waste. Caleb. I feel like my honor is being challenged in an unprecedented way. Look at Megan. She sees it too. She's trying so hard not to laugh. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Megan looking down, pretending to read the documents in front of her, but her trembling shoulders gave her away. I took a deep breath, banished the distracting thoughts, and took control of the meeting. From market analysis to profit-sharing models, I was sharp and logical, deftly sidestepping the few legal traps their lawyers had laid in the contract. Throughout the entire process, I could feel Mr. Hayes' expression shift from scrutiny to genuine appreciation. And Olivia just kept giving me that, you may be a business genius, but we all understand you have a physical shortcoming look of profound sympathy. I was about to lose it. Finally, after all the details were hammered out, we shook hands, sealing the deal. Mr. Hayes enthusiastically invited me to dinner, an offer I declined, citing a packed schedule. All I wanted was to get out of that room. Megan and I walked out of the conference room. We had just reached the elevators when we heard the clatter of high heels behind us. Mr. Thorne, please wait. It was Olivia. She hurried toward me, her cheeks slightly flushed from the effort, clutching something tightly in her hand. I stopped, my face a mask of neutrality, waiting to see what new fresh hell this was. Megan paused behind me, watching the scene unfold with undisguised interest. Olivia seemed nervous. She bit her lip, then, as if steeling herself, she shoved a folded piece of paper into my hand. It was a piece of parchment, and it smelled strongly of herbs and something vaguely medicinal. Mr. Thorne, she whispered, her eyes filled with a startling sincerity. I got this from a very famous naturopath. It's a special formula for, restoring a man's vitality. It's supposed to be very effective. She paused, looking at me with an encouraging expression. You're still young. Don't lose hope. You just have to be persistent. Try it. I'm sure it will work. The air went still. I looked down at the paper in my hand, which was covered in a list of ingredients like elk antler and Yuhimbi bark, then back up at her face, which screamed, I understand, and I'm rooting for you. The string in my brain labeled sanity finally snapped with a loud twang. I could actually hear Megan behind me let out a little puff of laughter she couldn't contain. The cringe of the century. Ah ha ha. Getting handed a prescription for erectile dysfunction by your ex almost one night stand. In front of your fiancé. Caleb, my man, stay strong. Olivia, don't worry. We can fix this. Caleb, thanks, I hate it. I held the flimsy piece of paper, which now felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I looked at Olivia and managed a smile that was probably more terrifying than a frown. Ms. Hayes, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I think there's been a monumental misunderstanding between us. 0.6-inch misunderstanding? Olivia looked confused for a second. Then her expression softened into an, I get it, you don't have to hide it from me look. She lowered her voice conspiratorially and leaned closer, the pungent herbal scent now assaulting my nostrils. Mr. Thorne, please don't get me wrong. I don't mean anything by it. I just figured. That night, you'd rather use that thing than touch me. You must have your reasons. I thought about it, and it must be because you can't. That's why you had your secretary handle it, right? Don't worry, she added reassuringly. Your secret is safe with me. Our companies are partners now. I just want you to be healthy. Truly, every single word was a tiny hammer tapping against the steel plate of my dignity, trying to punch a hole in it. Behind me, Megan was now shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. HYST, the misunderstanding is epic. She really thinks he's impotent. Because he couldn't, he had his secretary handle it. LMAO, Megan's probably going to use that against him forever. Caleb, now's your chance. Pin her against the wall and prove you're a real man. No way. He only needs to prove it to his fiancée. No one else matters. I looked at this woman's earnest, well-meaning face and, for the first time, felt the utter inadequacy of language. I took the foul-smelling prescription, holding it between two fingers as if it were contaminated, and offered it back to her. Ms. Hayes, I began slowly, my voice devoid of all warmth. I believe you're mistaken about a few things. She stared at me, bewildered. First, on the night in question, the reason I didn't touch you was not because I couldn't, but because I refused to take advantage of someone. You were drugged and incoherent. If I had done something, how would we have dealt with the aftermath? With you accusing me of ruining your life, only to disappear and come back years later with a secret child to kick off some tedious, drawn-out melodrama? My words were measured, but each one landed like a dart. The color began to drain from her face. Second, I paused, my gaze sweeping over her expensive suit. If I recall correctly, you have a fiancé, do you not? The heir to the Law Corporation, I believe. The news of your family's merger and your engagement was all over the business journals last month. I took a step forward, closing the distance until it was uncomfortably intimate, and stared directly into her eyes. So, what exactly did you expect me to do? Have a one-night stand with you on the eve of your engagement? Did you want to carry that memory into your new life with your future husband? Or did you just think it would be a thrill? Olivia's face went from pale to beet red in a heartbeat. I had tried to let her save face, and in return, she pitted me for a non-existent medical condition. The irony was suffocating. I didn't. She finally found her voice, but it was a pathetic squeak. Her eyes darted around, looking anywhere but at me. Take your prescription back, I said, pressing the paper into her trembling hand. Perhaps your fiancé could make better use of it. That was the final blow. Olivia recoiled as if she'd been burned, took 2 clumsy steps back, then turned and fled. The frantic, uneven clicking of her heels echoed down the hall as she practically threw herself into an arriving elevator. The doors slid shut, hiding her tear-streaked face. The world was quiet again. I stood there for a moment, letting out a long, slow breath. Behind me, a clear, unrestrained peal of laughter finally broke free. I turned around. Megan was leaning against the wall, laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. Her perpetual Ice Queen mask had shattered completely, revealing a bright, mischievous, and incredibly vital woman I'd never seen before. So, she said, finally catching her breath. She walked up to me, stood on her tiptoes, and poked me in the chest. Her eyes roamed over my body with playful scrutiny. She winked. Does this mean I need to personally verify tonight whether or not you actually need that herbal remedy, Mr. Thorne? 07. From the office to the altar, her voice was soft, still laced with laughter, but every word was a feather, tickling my last nerve. I looked down at her, my reflection captured in her shining, tear-brimmed eyes. The playful challenge in her gaze was like a spark, and it instantly reignited the fire that Olivia's ridiculous prescription had forced me to suppress. Red alert. I repeat, red alert. All civilians, evacuate the premises. Megan, my girl, you are playing with fire. Go for it, Caleb. Show her that practice is the sole criterion for testing truth. I smiled. Not a polite, corporate smile, but a real one, edged with danger. I didn't answer her. Instead, I undid the top 2 buttons of my shirt and began walking toward her. The grin on her face slowly vanished as she seemed to realize what kind of beast she had just provoked. She took an involuntary step back, her spine hitting the cool marble wall. There was nowhere left to run. Verify. I braced my hand on the wall next to her head, trapping her in my shadow. I leaned down until our noses were almost touching, our warm breaths mingling in the small space between us. You know me, Megan. I'm all about efficiency and tangible results. Her lashes fluttered, and a blush deeper than any sunset crept up her neck. She tried to sound defiant. Well, that depends on Mr. Thorne's execution. She never finished her sentence. I was already kissing her. This kiss was nothing like our first chaotic encounter. That had been an act of desperation fueled by drugs. This was a conscious, calculated conquest driven by pure possession. I parted her lips, leaving no room for protest, no chance for air. Her hands went from pushing against my chest to weakly gripping my shirt, and finally to tentatively wrapping around my neck. The hallway outside the elevator bank was silent, save for the sound of our thundering hearts and the soft, wet sounds of our kiss. After what felt like an eternity, I pulled back slightly. Her eyes were hazy with a film of moisture, her lips swollen and red. She sagged against me, panting for breath. Well, I asked, my voice a low rasp. Still want to verify? She bit her lip and glared at me with those wide, watery eyes, looking like a cornered rabbit. It was a look that held zero intimidation and 100% invitation. I swept her up into my arms, ignoring her startled gasp, and strode toward the private lounge attached to my office. The door swung shut behind us, kicked closed by my foot, sealing us off from the rest of the world. That night, Megan received a very thorough, hands-on demonstration of my execution. Her initial taunts turned to surprise, which then dissolved into breathless, tearful pleas for mercy. Her voice was raw by the end. She was like a rose after a storm, ravaged, fragile, and breathtakingly beautiful. Caleb, I was wrong. I'll never doubt you again. Please. I kissed the tears from the corners of her eyes and whispered in her ear, do we still need that prescription? She shook her head violently, burying her face in the pillows, refusing to look at me. After that night, our relationship entered a new phase. At the office, she remained the hyper-competent Megan Shaw, but her eyes would often dart away from mine with a new shyness. As for me, I became a model boss, insisting my staff leave on time, mostly because I couldn't wait to get home to the dinner she'd have waiting for me. We fell into the easy rhythm of a couple in love. We'd curl up on her sofa to watch movies, playfully argue over whether my tie clashed with her newest figurine, and engage in some very healthy and productive morning cardio on weekends. That prescription from Olivia, the one she'd treated like a sacred artifact, Megan had it framed. It now hangs on the wall of our bedroom. As she puts it, it's there to serve as a constant reminder and a lesson in humility. I have never witnessed such a diabolical method of flaunting a relationship. That's just cruel. If Olivia ever found out, she'd have an aneurysm. That's not a reminder. That's a trophy. 6 months flew by. Our wedding took place on a sun-drenched afternoon. We chose a small chapel upstate, with only our closest friends in attendance. I stood at the altar, waiting, and then I saw her. Megan, my bride. The sharp, tailored suits that had defined her were gone, replaced by a flowing gown of pure white. Her hair was swept up under a delicate veil, her makeup simple and elegant. All of her professional severity had melted away, leaving behind a woman so beautiful she looked like a fairy tale creature who had wandered into the real world. She held her bouquet and walked down the aisle, one step at a time, across the petal-strewn floor, coming toward me. In that moment, my heart skipped a beat. OMG, I'm crying. This is the happily ever after we needed. From the office to the altar, my ship has sailed and reached the promised land. Caleb is looking sharp, but Megan is absolutely glowing. She reached me and placed her hand in mine. It was a little cold, and I could feel a slight tremor. I squeezed it tightly, lending her my warmth, my strength. The officiant's solemn voice echoed through the chapel. To have and to hold, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part. I looked into Megan's eyes, the same eyes that were once so cool and composed, now filled with starlight and my own reflection. And I heard myself say, with perfect clarity, I do. My life script had been rewritten the moment she'd agreed to marry me. There'd be no cheap drama, no angsty misunderstandings. Just me and my leading lady,